So thank you for your flexibility. I'm Elisa Velardo, Deputy Commissioner, and so pleased to be able to join with you today. And I want to introduce Joe Carvalho, who will be assisting me and keeping an eye on the chat and troubleshooting any technology issues. So welcome, Joe. And I want to let everyone know that today's session is being
Right.
recorded. And we record the sessions in case there is somebody who's not able to join us today. They'll have access to this recording on the DDS website on the cover page under Fourth Tuesday Forums on Innovative Options. It takes us a little while to get the recordings up on the website, but they should be there shortly after the first of the year. And any of the presentations that are shared today will ask to be submitted to Joe, and we'll make sure that they're available on the website as well. So today's session has been long in coming. Remote support is one of the newest waivered services offered by DDS. And today you'll learn a little bit about what remote supports as a service is, and you'll hear from two of our provider agencies that piloted remote supports over this past year. And through that process, we're able to provide remote supports to a number of people and also assist DDS with understanding the service and making sure that we have things in place to roll remote supports out more broadly as we enter 2023. We have a series of presenters that'll be joining us. I ask that if you have questions that you type them in the chat. Two of our presenters have got to leave a little early. So what we'll do is we'll take questions after the provider presentations, and then we'll take questions again at the end of the forum. So you can either type your questions in the chat as you think of them, and then I'll take a pause midway through the forum, and we'll review any questions that have come in. At that point, if you have a question and you haven't been able to put it in the chat, you can also raise your hand and ask your question. All right, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Patricia Cymbala, who has been co-chair of the remote support work group and is going to share a little overview on remote supports. Welcome, Patricia.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
It's not only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
I'll go ahead and share your presentation, Patricia, then.
Oh, thank you.
One moment.
Thank you very much.
Is this the right one, Patricia?
Yep, that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. Today, we're going to talk about remote supports. My name is Patricia Cymbala, so let's get started. Joe, will I be able to move this, or will you have to move it for me?
I think I'll have to move it on, but
Okay.
I'm just going to try to do that in just one moment. Let's see if it works.
Okay. Okay. Remote supports. Remote supports is I'm sorry. Remote supports is a support that's provided by a staff to an individual from a remote location, and it's using technology that is that has two-way communication capability. Here we have, there's different systems here that are required to be used in order to provide remote supports, and that's motion sensing system, radio frequency and identification, live video and audio feed, GSP tracking, web-based oversight system, and the last is the most important because it tells you all the others that you could use, which is a device that otherwise meets the requirement for two-way communication. Basically, what's listed here is they are the method of carrying a message from one device to the other. If you look at radio frequency identification, that's basically the first thing that comes to mind is a garage door opener. And what it is pushing the button, sending the message to the garage door opener, and it opening it. So that is what's that. Remote supports is a new service that we're offering, but it has been around for quite some time. It was used a lot with elderly people. And the first people to actually really benefit from it would be the baby boomers. The baby boomers have used it to assist their aging parents with remote supports. And I foresee my generation embracing remote supports to take care of our aging parents, who would now be the baby boomers. Remote supports, simple definition of it would be that it addresses an individual's desire to live as independently as possibly as they can, and to take reasonable risks. But it gives them the ability to practice dignity of risk, to live a life where they learn from their successes as well as their mistakes. Joe, do you mind switching to the next? It doesn't get more person-centered than remote supports and assistive technology. And looking at remote supports and looking at evaluations, assistive technology evaluations, they're all about an individual. They are specific to the needs of a person's assistive technology and remote support needs. Basically, with an assistive technology evaluation, you'd be looking for assistive technology, either one product to meet the needs of a particular disability or what have you. But you could also do an evaluation where you're trying to find all of the assistive technology that meets the needs of a person in order for them to live independently within their house. So you look at assistive technology as the tools that are put in place in order for someone to be able to use remote supports. I'll actually change this. I put in enabling technology, assistive technology services only because it's often confusing. I often get asked what's the difference between them. Enabling technology is an umbrella that encompasses assistive technology, remote supports, and assistive technology services. And assistive technology is any item, piece of equipment, product, and it's basically, or can be customized to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of an individual. And assistive technology services is basically, it's everything that an individual would use in the selection, acquisition, and the use of assistive technology. So that's the evaluation, that's the buying the products from the evaluation, as a result of the evaluation, installing them, and it would also the report as well. So it's every aspect that you would go through in order to get assistive technology into a person's life. So thank you, Joe. On to the next one. Okay, different stages of moving towards remote support. So I see three different stages. So remote support ready. In this stage, an individual has self-determined that they want to live independently, and they demonstrate skills and readiness to do so. They're open to support from technology, and usually when they do move, the integration of technology and the move happen at the same time. Planned transition. Planned transition could be someone who sees themselves living independently or moving towards remote supports, but they're not quite sure when, and they may not have the skills yet. So that individual, they would benefit from it, and they see, but they might need additional skill development prior to, reducing their staff. So the technology would then be integrated into their current residence, and when they were ready to move, that same technology would transition into their new living space. Community, a person, I see that as a person who may not want to do remote supports, or may not be ready, or may not just be thinking of it. So in that case, what I would do is I would implement technology I would provide technologies to them and try to enhance different parts of their lives, which would be navigating community activities, transportation, or in a work environment, using technology in those ways, and holding off on the residents and just trying to enhance the everyday aspects of their life that they do. Joe, do the next one, please. So why remote supports? There's a lot of reasons why remote supports. It's actually a really, really great service. If you go back, Joe. Okay, thank you. First of all, it's integrated. It can be integrated into home, work, or community activities. It provides solutions. It promotes independence, self-determination, and community integration. It's a natural support, and it can maximize safety. It can reinforce skill development, and it supports daily routines. There's a lot of benefits to remote supports, and it really is a life-changing service. Expanding our view of remote supports. Remote supports expands the traditional concept of assistive technology from a device that may address a single concern or challenge to a service that supports and sustains an individual's independence. When it's implemented correctly, it's not, it doesn't replace human supports, but it links provider agencies and families, caregivers, to the individual. Staff's responsibilities may change, they may be modified, but the direct support element isn't removed completely. It may be modified just to respond to alerts, and they also have the ability to serve more people. The issues we're currently faced with the shortage of the direct support professionals, and more people needing assistance and services, it will be an increasing problem, especially with the baby boomers needing the services that they will be needing. So that's an ongoing problem, and that's something that remote supports can help with. Advocating and creating solutions. Prioritizing value, person-centered planning, and including the right to self-determination, and implementing flexible technology-based supports, we would hope would create and maintain independent living options. We do very well with person-centeredness here in Connecticut. And talking to other states and going to different conferences, I see that. I see how ahead we are and how well we think of and how much we implement person-centered planning. And DDS is looking to the future. So remote supports and assistive technology will require that we're always staying ahead of new emerging technologies. We're learning how they're being used, how their outcomes are being measured, how their deployment is overseen, and basically all to enhance direct care planning and improve outcomes. And this will hopefully increase choices for families. Maintaining data is going to be very, very important, because that'll assist us in knowing where we are now and assist us in future decisions that we need to make and where we want to go. So data is extremely important. And increasing the number of assistive technology evaluators, which is something that we're working on right now, because a good evaluator can see the specific needs of an individual. And basically, so we're trying to increase the number of those. So our most important asset of all is that we have this knowledge, which can only be achieved through ongoing education. And that's something that we're focusing on staff, having educating staff and all stakeholders on remote supports and assistive technology, so that we can see a future in these two services. So thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. All right. So that's an overview, but as we do in these forums, we're also going to paint the picture. We're going to give you some examples, and we can take this concept and see it come to life. I want to check in and see Michelle and Yvette. Are you on the call?
We are. It's Yvette, Michelle, and Rachel.
And Rachel. Okay. I would like to turn it over to Michelle, Yvette, and Rachel. And they join us from the ARC of Eastern Connecticut. And the ARC of Eastern Connecticut was one of the agencies that piloted remote supports over this past year. I've had the opportunity to learn from their experiences. I've heard their stories as they've piloted this service, and I couldn't be more thrilled than to introduce you. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'm Michelle. I'm the Assistant Director for In-Home Supports, and Yvette Horton behind me is the Director of the In-Home Supports, and we have Rachel Gologly, who's a supervisor. So we were selected for the pilot of remote supports in February. We picked 10 people to get us started. Two of them, which Andrea, I see you wrote about a CLA. We have 2 women who are actually in a group home that we selected to do remote supports in the pilot just for more alone time, because we are actually thinking of putting them in our cluster home that we're developing also. And then the other 8, we have their individuals of all ages. We have someone who's like 75 and some who are in their 20s still, that live with their either on their own or with their family members. So we selected them based on their independence and their level of need. We've teamed up with Midstate ARC, who helped us get our own assessment forms, and teamed up with ATEC through Midstate, where we would order any assistive technology that we're thinking of for each person in their homes.
We also met in the community for our first 2 assessments with Midstate ARC. That was phenomenal and a great learning experience for us to partner with an agency that was already out in the community performing assessments. So we were able to learn from Midstate how to make an assessment for assistive technology.
So each individual, we did our own assessments. We spoke with their team. We talked with their case managers themselves, and any community members that would that is involved in their lives, and seeing where they would want to expand their independence. And we picked certain devices for them. So some people, well, they all have panels, which is all connected to like motion sensors, so where we can monitor any unusual activities throughout the day. For example, one of our elderly women, she lives on her own. She has staffing, direct staffing, but not 24/7. So on the weekend, she might not have staff, but we can see if there's anything unusual going on and make sure she got out of bed or is moving around, because she is getting up there in age. And we did actually notice there was a change in her routine, because normally she would be up and around the house, and she started staying in bed a lot more. And then we noticed that she actually wasn't feeling well, and we actually got her checked out at the doctor and found out that she was having a health issue just from seeing the motion sensors around her home. We also have some of our individuals have cook stops that are in front of the stove. So if they're cooking, they have to stay in front of their stove to prevent any fires, and it will shut off if you walk away after a certain amount of minutes.
We had individuals that were scared of their stoves that had these devices installed. We had one young lady who cooked bacon and it set off the fire alarm, and we were able to call her in contact, and we were close by, so we stopped by to check in. But she was so nervous, like, oh no, I set off the alarms. But we were actually excited that having that device there made her feel comfortable to try to cook something. So we started to work with her with cooking because she felt safe too. So that was another bonus of having that device in the apartment.
Another device we had was the MedSmart pill box. A lot of our individuals have visiting nurses who now with this kind of COVID era, we're very short on visiting nurses services. So a lot of our individuals got their services cut. So we have the MedSmart box with that was start a alarm set up for every hour or whenever they needed to take their meds. So we'll remind them to take their medicine. And if they missed a dose, it would alert us and we would call the person and be like, hey, what's going on? You forgot to take your meds, and they'll take it. And we could see if they're low on meds, and it keeps us more up to date on their med management.
And it also promoted independence because there were some individuals that got the devices where we were calling or staff was reminding the individual to take the medication. But it's been a couple of months since we've had to remind some individuals about their meds. So they've become more independent with taking them, and we've had no alerts for missed doses.
And as Patricia was saying about remote supports, it does help us like reallocate the services because we don't want to stop the direct staffing, but say somebody actually gets COVID, we are still available remotely to support them where they're like if we're needed. So we don't have to be there in person, but they can always call us and help them the way we can. And we can reallocate our staff by having more, they can reach out to more people instead of just having one person.
And then we also have individuals that are more comfortable being in their homes now. We have one young lady that still lives at home with her family that has always dreamed about getting her own apartment. She was part of the pilot. Since having remote services in place and knowing that if something happens, someone can be in touch with her right away, she's decided she's ready to move into her own apartment. So I think there's so many benefits to remote supports for our individuals.
I see a question. How long did you need to monitor an established baseline? So, yeah, remote supports, it's always changing. So we start off with, a baseline of what we think that they would like, because it's always changing. What works with them for 1 month might not work for them next month. So it's never like a concrete thing. So it's say, the cook stop, they're doing so good and they might not need that reminder to stay near the thing, near the stove. We can always just take that away or add something that would, it depends on their need. So it's always changing.
And then the baseline through ATEC you want to talk about, it monitors and after about a good 2 to 3 weeks, it starts to pick up a baseline on the person's level of activeness in the house. It depends on the devices you have, but through the website of ATEC, it starts to develop average patterns for each individual.
If there's the panel on each person's house it's linked to a website where they would watch, like Yvette was saying, watch it. And then if we have any alerts, it'll show us that something's going on or something's different.
And then another thing we did during our remote support pilot was DDS afforded us the opportunity to go through a shift course, which is, I think is very important when you're going to provide remote services. It taught us to think outside of the box. Some things we never thought about would be involved in remote supports were. We learned about the dignity of rest for our individuals, and it just gave us a very good, solid understanding of remote support. So the shift training, I think, is very important.
Definitely brought in our viewing things, just like the Alexa. We have one anyways in our house. We never think about it. It can help us, prompt us to do something, remind us to, set the time back because of daylight savings, or you have a doctor's appointment. We don't think of stuff like that out the box. So taking that shift, it showed us that just little simple things we already have on us, so we can broaden for them. There's another question. How does this address the hundreds of individuals who are on the waiting list?
So we're gonna hold the questions. I'm gonna hold the questions until after the provider presentations, and then we'll go to the questions.
Okay.
But I think remote support has opened up our staff to be able to provide services to their individuals in person and For our people who don't want to come out on that day that have remote supports in place and they just want help going through a recipe. And they want to do a video chat with you, it's still opened up the door for you to be able to provide services to that person, not being in their home. So I think it's gonna be the future wave of services. Rachel, is there anything you wanted to add?
I know we had I know this will probably be a question later, is the challenges. We learned the challenges during remotes is sometimes it's actually like, you know, it could be the girls in the CLA, the staff were a little weary about, you know, them having this tech, so they're not going to need me. So, and some of the staff in our in-home supports are like, oh, if they have this, does that mean that my hours get cut? And it's not that. So it's a lot of training and reassurance to all the team members, even their guardians, or even the person. Like, you know, it's something to better everybody. It's not just, you know, to take away from one another.
And we've seen the opposite. We're hoping when there is another forum like this, the young lady who I'm speaking of will come and maybe talk next time. Before remote support, she was declining services a lot. After the equipment was installed, she's out every single day. She's actually calling us before we get in the office to want to go out. So I think it depends on the person. It really does.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your presentation, and I see that there's a lot of activity. I know that there are some questions. Based on the time limitations, we want to make sure we get through the presentation. So we're gonna turn it over to Pam Fields and Kat Woods from Midstate, who the team at Arc of Eastern Connecticut referred to. And Pam and Kat are going to share a little bit about Midstate's experience and the services that they provide, and then we'll go to the questions. We'll review questions, and then we've got some great 2 additional presenters. So if you give us just a little time, we'll get to those questions. Welcome, Pam and Kat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. And Joe, just so you know, we're on, and you won't need to because we have the slide thing on, actually, we're on 2 different cameras. So I'm gonna cover some of the slides and then Kat is gonna take over when we get into the nitty gritty. So Midstate Arc did a remote monitoring pilot right alongside Arc of Eastern Connecticut. And we were really excited to be part of that. Just go back one, Joe. Okay, that one, thank you. So we had 2 environments that we had people living in during this pilot. So one of the environments was a cluster environment. We had 6 people living in the cluster. A cluster environment has an overnight staff available on the premises, not necessarily in the apartment complex, because this specific complex has 8 different buildings. So the staff is available somewhere within those 8 buildings. The people are sprinkled around those 8 buildings, and they can monitor the individuals with the use of assistive technology. So that was one environment. Next one, Joe. The next environment was an IHS environment, which is one we're typically all used to, where people live in their own apartment. We had 2 people participating in the pilot from this environment. One person lived in Meriden in their own apartment, and the other person lived in this apartment building in North Haven. Next slide. So along with what you just heard, each of our apartments were equipped with a variety of assistive technology. We start out with an assessment process, meeting with the team, discussing how we're going to move forward. And then throughout the assessment process, it's identified where the person's barriers are to independence. And with that assessment, we then can identify different pieces of assistive technology that we can use to bridge those gaps and to help the person live independently and monitor and participate in their own life without as much verbal and physical interventions from other people. So here on the screen, you can see a variety of different pieces of technology that we used during our pilot. We used our ARMS remote monitoring system. We used MedMinders and the dose slip, which helped with electronic med giving. We used the Ring doorbell. We used the Alexa Show, the Cook Stop, and the safety sensors for cooking safety, GPS tracking devices, including soles that went into the shoes. We used a PERS system, and a PERS system is a system that you typically see on TV of the woman who's fallen and can't get up. Somebody's wearing them and they're walking out in the community and they can push the button and call for help when they need it. So we used a Bella system for that purpose. We also used video chatting devices, including a Claris Companion, and the Alexa Show was also used for that. We had various door locks that people could use different methods to get into their houses. So they could use a key, a fob, you can use a thumbprint, or even a pupil eye gaze to open a door. They can all be set up differently depending on the needs of the person. One individual wasn't able to use his phone, and that says photo, so that's an error that I didn't pick up. So he has a VTech phone system, not a photo system, that had different photos of the people that he needed to call, and he could just push a button and call them from his house. And then a lot of our individuals use public transportation, including apps for Uber and Lyft. So I can have the next slide, please. So we also, as we went through this process, we realized there were other additional resources that we needed to tack on. So additional resources and services that were either out in the community or somewhere else in the system that could help somebody stay independent and address different needs. So we did create the Assistive Technology Training Center to help train all of our staff and keep people up to date on the latest assistive technology. Meals on Wheels is very helpful when somebody is struggling to prepare healthy meals, especially if they might have more of a complex diet need. There's travel training that we've implemented from the Kennedy Center to help people learn to use public transportation. We also use the shift training to train our staff on the different levels of remote monitoring and assistive technology. We created an independent living cooking class to help the individuals that wanted to cook in their houses and were struggling with that. We also created a donation program for household items and furniture for people moving into their apartments, or as items needed to be replaced and they didn't have the money to do that. We accessed food pantries in the community if we needed additional food resources. The individuals would access state-issued phones if they could not afford to purchase their own smartphone. We use heat assistance if someone needed that part of the resources. And we also access DDS's one-time process for some apartment item setups cost. The next slide here, and then I think Kat, yep, Kat's going to take over from here. There you go, Kat.
Thank you, Pam. Hi, my name's Kat Wood. I'm the Director of Community Integration here at Midstate ARC. I oversee our supports through the cluster and individualized services. The next slide that we have here is really just kind of going over what we saw worked and didn't work with the remote monitoring. This was stuff that we were able to see over time while we were kind of getting the pilot up and going, time spent with families of the loved ones receiving the supports, the individuals themselves, as well as the staff that were in and out of the homes. Skype was a system that was used with one of the original gentlemen that was utilizing the remote supports. And we really kind of just found out it was too difficult for him to be able to use. And there was obviously looking through more options out there to be able to support somebody virtually. The Ring doorbell is a system that we use in many of the homes in the cluster. Not everybody utilizes a Ring doorbell, but we realized for one of our individuals who really struggled with once moving into his own apartment, answering the door to people that he didn't know or were unsure of. As we know, different staff might be picking up different shifts, and if he wasn't familiar with them, he did not want to open the door. With the Ring doorbell, we were able to support him with him being able to see who was at the door, as well as us on our end getting the alert when somebody came to the door, to be able to give him a call and say it is okay to let them in. That's a staff person that's there to help support you. The same gentleman, one of the concerns once moving into independent living was him being out there in the community by himself without a staff, having alone time, and him potentially venturing away from his apartment. We were able to get the GPS tracking soles that he wears in his shoes, that if he were to leave and say a staff were to show up and he's not around, and we're able to locate him with the GPS tracking. Bed sensors kind of falls in between what worked and what didn't work, just because we have some people the bed sensors are extremely helpful with, as Eastern Arts mentioned, for somebody who's potentially not feeling good, not getting out of bed when typically they would be out of bed, we'd be get the alerts and be able to follow up. But then we also found with some of the people that we support that it was just too much for them. They which kind of leads into that too much technology, where they felt, okay, it's okay that you're helping me with the remote supports, but I really don't need a bed sensor for you guys to know when I'm getting up and up out of my bed or getting into my bed. And us being able to talk with the teams and say, something, they're absolutely right. This really isn't needed. We could remove this and just kind of continue with the other remote technology that's in the apartments. We have up here the VTech phone. As Pam mentioned, we had the one gentleman who, is not able to dial phone numbers, but he is able to notice a picture, and we wanted to make sure that he was able to remain in contact with his loved ones and anyone else that he chose to call, and not be restricted because he was unable to remember or dial a phone number. The Claire's Companion, and we have it kind of versus the smart speaker, which is your Echo Show. Originally, we were utilizing the Claire's Companion, which worked really, really well for some people. But then we had other people who the Echo Show worked better for, just because it allowed family members to be able to remain, connected with their loved ones and be able to just drop in and check on them and see how things are doing. Same thing for us. If we have an alert come through, it's another means for us to be able to connect with someone to kind of drop in on the Echo Show and, do a kind of health and wellness check and make sure that everything in the apartment is okay and then the individual is okay. The LEQ was a piece of technology that we had tried to use with one of our elderly individuals who live out there on their own. And it was another piece of device that we found really just didn't work. It was a little more complex, and it really struggled with understanding the individual when she was speaking to her. So again, that just wasn't a system that worked, but it's definitely an option that's out there for other people to stay connected, and sometimes to help give a little bit of connection with somebody so that they're not feeling alone. The staff working style was probably the biggest change for us when looking at the remote monitoring, really kind of getting the staff to understand what the remote monitoring is, for them to understand that it's just additional supports and it's not pulling away from them, and how it's to better support and make the individuals that we serve successful in living independently. And then we have the staff shift reporting button. So we put this in place for our third shifts over at the cluster, just because it is a third shift position. Nobody's there, during those hours. And we wanted to ensure that staff are showing up to work, somebody's there. So once they get to shift, they push the button, it sends us alert so that we know that somebody's there. If if it doesn't go off 15 minutes following like the start of the shift, we would get an alert, and we're then able to follow up with the staff, again, to ensure that somebody is there on third shift and monitoring the systems that are in everybody's apartments. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So the growth with the remote supports, so much growth. We probably didn't even capture everything in this one slide. The first thing I want to start with is the growth for the person themselves. So we had one gentleman who was living in a 24-hour setting who moved into the cluster and was receiving the remote supports. one of the biggest accomplishments was this gentleman went from a lawn score 6 to a lawn score 4, living independently. The staffing decreased. You know, we're talking about people who've either lived in their family homes or they've lived in residential homes receiving supports 24/7. And now they're living in their own apartments, and some people only having staff come for 10, 12 hours a week to support them. And again, really just depending on the lawn score and the need of the person. Some people may require more face-to-face supports, but it's still a lot less than what, you know, they were receiving prior to. Better quality of life, huge one. Everybody wants more in life, and the remote supports really is helping bring the individuals re-support to that better quality of life, giving them the things in life that we take for granted every single day. Having alone time, being independent, cooking our own meals, ordering groceries for ourselves, taking our own medication. It's those little things that make such a huge impact in people's day-to-day. Having individualized choices, being able to say, what time do you want to take your meds, and setting up your med dispenser for that exact time. You know, what time you want a staff person to come in, what time you want to eat, what time you want to go to bed, what time you want to wake up. It's just to have those choices and not have somebody standing there telling you what needs to be done continuously throughout the day. Remaining connected to the community is a big one, is being able to get out there in the community on your own, utilizing that app on the phone to be able to use Lyft or Uber to get to and from work, or just fun activities in the community, meeting up with friends. And I think the huge one is people's voices got much bigger and they're being heard now, which is huge. And that growth alone just speaks volumes. And then the change in how families and friends perceive their loved ones. You know, we sit so many times with families and they think that their loved one's never going to be able to live on their own. And now with the remote supports, there's so much that we could put in place to help people achieve these goals. Within our agency, the growth that we've seen is the staffing requirements and changes, the internal structures around the change, you know, adding the assistive technology positions, the quality assurance positions, and then just restructuring the way management is set up. We've created so many new policies and procedures to really just tap into the needs of the individuals based off of remote monitoring. We've created so many new assessments. And as you sit down and do assessments and you meet with families and you meet with the teams, and then you realize that there's more assessments that are needed just to really dig deep into who somebody is and what their needs are and how we could accommodate them. And then we've changed our training requirements, you know, to move staff from that caretaking thought of being in a residential home and 24/7 and you're responsible for taking care of somebody hands-on all the time, to teaching them how to teach people to be independent and do things on their own. And then the added technology for staff. So, you know, not only are we adding technology, you know, for the use for the individuals, we've also added technology to help the staff be able to work more independently and to be able to work outside of a base site. If you could move to the next slide, please. In the midst of all this, we've also really looked at what other additional things are needed in the future to continue to make this successful and help it grow. More training for staff. I know, you know, Eastern Arc talked about the shift training, which was a huge training. It's something we're signing everybody up for, but we're just looking at, there's more training that's really required to really get everybody on the same page, to teach staff how to make the community connections, to really teach the individuals that are going to be moving into independent living and utilizing the remote support, what it really means for them, and travel training. Travel training is available for the individuals we serve, but it's also important for the staff to be trained on what travel training is and how they could teach the individuals to be more independent and using their remote monitoring to help them set up rides to get out into the community. More classes for the person moving to independent living versus where they're coming from. So as we're doing assessments, you're learning, you know, what somebody's been doing for the last, say, 10 years of their lives and what areas they potentially could use more assistance in. And then you realize that a lot of people are answering questions really kind of gauged on what they've been taught to respond. So just more training for people moving into independent living, just really around cyber safety, dealing with emergencies, grocery shopping, cleaning, just those, again, those basic things that we take for granted every single day, but are really, really important for somebody who's going to be moving into their own place for the first time. More training for families on what independence really means for their loved ones, so that they have a clear understanding of what it means for somebody to move out on their own and, you know, be supported not only from staff, but be supported from all these great opportunities through the remote monitoring. And then the changes with DDS, you know, with the assistance financially to be able to set somebody up to be able to be successful living independently on their own with the remote monitoring, and then maintaining it as well, because there's so much more that comes with it. If I could have the next slide, please. Now that people are living independently in their own homes, what are they telling us? As we've been sitting down and really just having conversations with the individuals about the remote monitoring and living independently, and, you know, what they like, what they don't like, you know, we really just try to take note so that we could continuously improve things, because we want it to be successful. So things that we've been hearing is people want more alone time. They want less staff, less technology. And with the less technology is, again, that comes with that understanding and training of what the remote monitoring really is. You know, to really have people understand that it's there to support them. It's not there to eavesdrop on their lives and follow what they're doing. And a lot of times that's what people's thoughts are. And then the technology that's in there maybe isn't needed for everybody. And slowly but surely we can kind of pull back on what we're monitoring and give people more independence and see where they are. People want better transportation. They want to be able to be transported independently and not have to rely on staff and family all the time. They want to have relationships. They want to have their own apartments and have people over, whether it's you know, a love relationship or it's a relationship of friends, just to do, again, those things that we take for granted every single day, and do it without feeling like people are eavesdropping and watching. And then most importantly, they want their own lives. And that's a big piece of what remote monitoring is. It's helping people be able to get what they want in life. Next slide, please. So this picture here is just a great picture in general, but it really just shows, you know, with that remote monitoring, what it could help with teaching people, especially with our independent living cooking class, which is something that we offer here. And it's really helped so many of our people who are living independently be able to learn just those basic cooking skills, to be able to cook themselves a meal and not have to rely on anyone else to do so. And there's just so many more options outside of just the cook stop and the microwave sensor that, you know, they're able to utilize in these classes. And if it works well, to be able to move into their own homes and, again, be able to just successfully do things independently on their own and own their own lives. That is it. Thank you very much, Pam. I wasn't sure if you had anything else you wanted to add around the cooking class.
No, you did a great job.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
You all did a great job. Thank you. So I know we have some time limitations from some of the presenters that just presented. So I'm going to highlight some of the questions that are particularly focused to you. And then we have two more presentations, and we'll get to the rest of the questions at the end. Peg asks, how do you handle power outages, Wi-Fi issues, that type of thing?
I can take that, Elisa, Pam. So each person needs to have a backup plan. Most of the technology does have some kind of battery life that goes on a little longer than when you lose power. But everybody has to have a plan, because some of the technology may not have to be activated immediately, where with a certain person, maybe it has to be immediate. So if that goes down, a staff needs to be on site. But with another person, if that goes down, maybe they need to call every hour. So it's really an individualized plan on how you're going to respond to each of those issues, whether it's a power outage, it could be an internet failure, it could be a cellular data base goes down, it could be a piece of equipment that fails. And no matter what it is, you have to have a plan for each person because each person's different.
Thank you. I just got a cold weather advisory for the weekend ahead. So I think that that planning process in some ways is not only instrumental, but it's best practice across the board. And so thank you. And I know Arc of Eastern Connecticut already responded to this, but Nathan had asked, how long do you need to monitor to establish sufficient baseline data to be able to notice change in routine? And I didn't know, Pam or Kat, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because I know you've done a lot of work in this area.
Again, those questions are so hard to answer in general because everything about this is based on the person. So some people, when they're being monitored, you know, our systems, our ARM system learns routine. So you have that 2-week period, but we're getting the alerts all the time. So within a day or two, you're learning what their routine is, even though it's taking the system a little longer. The people who are monitoring are seeing that. So it really is based on the person on how long it would take to know whether they're ready or not. It just really is individualized. I'm sorry, I can't give any more than that.
That's fine. I know that you're looking at, I know from our meetings as we went through the pilot process, you're always looking at the data and looking at what, you know, what is typical and what might be outside of what is typical, and you're always adjusting. So it seems like it's a dynamic process. It's over time, as you're learning more about the person and their needs, you're adjusting.
Absolutely. And we even have people watching that each day to see those alerts and were the systems followed. So did the person who receives the alert respond to the alert? Was it the right way to respond? Did the person get what they needed? So it, you know, it really is a comprehensive system of making sure the follow through is there.
Thank you. There was a question, are there restrictions on which service lines remote supports can be used in? And can remote supports be used as a tool in a CLA to aid with someone increasing alone time? And I can field that. Remote supports is a waivered service, so it cannot be offered at the same time as another waivered service is offered. And I put the link to our webpage that describes what remote supports are, and it gives definitions. There's a lot of material there. So basically, in a 24-hour setting, a CLA, a CRS, or CCH, remote supports, the waivered service, could not be offered in those settings. Having said that, certainly the technology that's used for remote supports can absolutely be used in those settings. And so I think both of our presenters have talked about utilizing technology when people are in a 24-hour setting to acclimate them to the technology and as they're preparing to transition. And Pam, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your approach with the transitional home you're in the process of rolling out.
Sure. Yes, we've used the technology in the group homes to help some of those people in our pilot move out into the pilot, into the individual apartments. And as we've moved more and more people over the years, because we've been working with independent living with assistive technology since 2014, we really think there was a need to develop a training place where people could have that 24-hour supports, but maybe live in their own apartment and learn to be independent. So the whole safety net is underneath them, holding everything to make sure, you know, all bases are covered. And then the team we can do different trials and watch how they proceed and then decide, okay, they've got it. Let's move them out into their own apartment, or let's move them out into a cluster where there's an overnight staff. but not necessarily 24-hour staff during the day. So we are developing those models. We have, we're entering another program to do that. Yeah. Thank you.
And Jamie Lazaroff, you had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes, I just had a comment. What we've been doing for almost 6 months now is, as you know, my job is self-advocate coordinator at the Arc Eastern Connecticut. Me and my support person has been remote on Fridays, so gives me a little more independence on the day to get my work done. She'll Zoom me or Team me or whatever. That day to check in to see, I have done, the assignment for that day. But she's not, physically here with me. So I just wanted to mention that as a remote service. Thank
That's
you.
a great example. And I think we haven't delved into remote supports in the workplace as much as we have in the home environment, but that's a great example of some of the uses as we roll this out over time. Well, we still have our
Yes.
providers with us, and I want to leave time for our other presentations. There is a question. Is there a staff person monitoring data that comes from things such as the arms monitoring, the Ring doorbell, the GPS trackers continuously 24/7?
The data from all of those systems go into the database and alerts us for anything we've asked it to alert us for. So if we wanted it to tell us every time a sensor went off, it would tell you every time every sensor went off in that house. Most of the people we have living independently, we have it set to tell us when it's outside their normal routine. So the system learns their normal routine and it lets us know outside. But again, like Kat was saying, with the Ring doorbells and the video doorbell through the ARM system, when the alerts go out, the staff can jump on and see what that is. So they're not necessarily sitting there staring at the database, because the database will send you the alerts that you want to get.
Thank you. All right. I know that there are additional questions, and I promise we will get to them. There are some of the bigger overall system questions. But at this point, I want to make sure that we leave time for our final presentations. I would like to turn it over to Wayne Seidel. Wayne, are you there?
Yeah. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Are we rolling Amy's video at this time?
I'm here.
Amy, are you back? Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
All right. Yes, we're
ready for our video?
We'll show the video and then we'll talk about the actual process. Wonderful.
Excellent. All right. I'm getting my Christmas hat on for you guys.
Amy, if I could, would you like to share your screen with the video? Or would you like me to? I'm good either way.
Oh, I can share mine if you'd like. Yeah. Just
Wonderful,
give me
thank you.
one moment. Right. Gotta make sure I include the sound on this. And here we go.
Connecticut Department of Developmental Services has developed remote supports as an option that combines the benefits of the latest technological devices with access to natural or paid support to promote, improve, and enhance one's independence. Remote supports refers to the delivery of supports at a remote location through virtual means with staff who are engaged with the individual through technology or devices with the capability for live two-way communication.
Hi, I'm Kat Wood. I'm the Director of Integration for Midstate ARC. I oversee our independent living, remote monitoring, and cluster living.
Hi, I'm Ann.
Hi, Tara Jordan. I work IHS Annie Lynch.
So I think one of the major success stories just across the board is the ability for the individuals we support to be able to live on their own independently. We have so many who've spent their life living in family homes or living in group homes. So it was just a huge transition and just amazing just to be able to watch people kind of become who they are and live on their own.
Anne always relied on nursing staff to administer her medications. Now with the Dose Flip automatic medication dispenser, she'll know exactly when to take her medications one dose at a time.
It was beep.
And then what you do?
Use my bed.
Right. And she's looking, and she's looking. I said, it's coming, it's coming. And then we,
Annie had multiple staff supporting her, really struggled behaviorally and was having restraints almost done daily, 2 people restraints. She kind of ended up into like living on her own in like a CRS due to medical reasons. And then it was that aha moment of, wow, look how great she's doing living on her own. And we were able to put her in an apartment and start to, you know, titrate the hours down and put the remote monitoring in. And now here she is, a few years later, living independently on her own.
Each apartment is equipped with an ARMS system for personal safety. This system connects sensors to a software platform. Then, based on notifications set up ahead of time, remote support personnel and other designated recipients receive and appropriately respond to alerts. The Amazon Show and the Claris Companion are both great examples of how touchscreen tablets can be used within the home for a variety of reasons, including two-way video communication with remote support staff, call features, videos, movies, music, games, and more.
You have your Alexa Show. You have your wellness system, right, Sabrina? That has alerts on your doors and windows and fridge, stove. You have a bed sensor. You also have the Ring doorbell.
The bathroom thing for.
Yep, that's right, the red button in the bathroom. So if anything were to happen in the bathroom, you could press it and somebody could come help you. You have a cook stop on your stove and the microwave sensor as well.
Microwave and toaster sensors are designed to catch fumes that may indicate burning. If that is the case, the units will automatically shut down and reduce the risk of fire. Other important features of the ARMS wellness system includes a control panel which uploads sensor information to a software platform, which can then be reviewed by remote support staff and appropriately responded to. Door and window sensors, they detect whether doors and windows are open or closed. Bed sensors, motion detectors, smoke detectors, video doorbells, and emergency buttons.
I'm Celeste. I'm 68. My hobby is play bingo and stuff like that.
Door locks and access through the security system also include digital locks with fobs, code, fingerprint, and/or key entry access.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I work for Midstate ARC, and I'm support staff for Miss Celeste Gardner.
Channel like the oldies, like Elvis Presley and Temptations.
Okay.
Johnny Cash.
Rosenmine. Oh, what a life.
Pictures on the phone.
My name's Jonah.
You're not Jonah, right?
For more information about remote supports, assistive technology, or other resources, please visit our website at departmentofdevelopmentalservices-ct.gov.
Well, thank you, Amy Blazowski, for producing that video. And I think one of the benefits of this forum is not just that information is provided, but the stories are shared, and you did a beautiful job of capturing remote supports as they impact people in their lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Midstate, great job with coordinating that. They were just such a pleasure to work with. So thank you. Made my job easier as a videographer.
You're very welcome, Amy.
All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Seidel, who will talk a little bit about the process from a case management perspective. And so, Wayne, it's all yours.
Thanks, Elisa. I'm Wayne Seidel, Director of Case Management here at DDS, and I will say we're really excited about expanding remote support. As you've heard, there's a small amount of remote support happening from our pilots, and we're just about to unleash this and make sure that everybody knows about it as another tool in the toolbox of waivered services to be able to offer. In January, we've had some sessions to introduce this to case managers, but not all case managers know about it yet. So following this presentation and in January, we'll be having a lot more conversations about remote supports in hopes of really expanding the use of this if and where appropriate. I'm going to use a quick slideshow, just a handful of slides to guide me through the conversation, make sure I stay on track. Remote supports really does fall in line with the principles here at DDS of person-centered planning and helping people to live self-determined lives. That also speaks to helping people achieve the independence that they're seeking. And we think of this in three different ways for remote supports: gaining, maintaining, or reclaiming. And what I mean by gaining are these circumstances like Arc of Eastern Connecticut described, where you might have somebody living in a family home that is apprehensive to take that next step. And this is another tool that might help people get there. Perhaps an individual is concerned about taking those steps too, and this provides a level of security and comfort knowing that there's a person on the other end of the line just a touch away. As far as maintaining, there are times in individuals that live independently who have increasing needs over time and as they age. And sometimes those increasing needs lead to situations where they have to consider other forms of support, or remote support actually offers an opportunity to hopefully maintain that independence longer. It's another tool in the toolbox, as we say. And reclaiming independence. So you also heard examples of individuals that perhaps live in a congregate setting have been seeking and desiring independence, and it's been determined that remote supports can help them get there. And so we want to think of that quest for independence and remote support as a tool to get you there in these three ways. So what's the process? Well, case managers will have the opportunity to educate families, especially as they're thinking in the future. They're thinking about those that might really benefit from this. and offer information. And today is a perfect example. This forum is an opportunity to start conversations about what remote supports are. There's also lots of materials on our website. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And one of the items on there is a tool called the Is Remote Support Right for Me tool. It's a one-page document that first helps you identify what would you be seeking to achieve if you were to utilize remote supports. And then it runs through a list of things just to think about when determining, is this the right service for me? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. That tool will help guide a team through that discussion. The decision and planning making process comes next if it's determined that it is right. And that's where you really get down to it and you determine, okay, well, who is going to be my virtual support partner? What kind of technology are we going to use? How are we going to use and ensure that the training occurs with that? You might walk into it with an idea of what technology will be helpful, but you might not know. And so there might be a point where you're seeking an enabling technology assessment to help determine what technology is out there that can help. And then lastly, after you move through that process, a case manager may need to request additional resources from a planning, resource, and allocation team in the region. Many times, existing funding can be utilized, but sometimes additional funding is needed to ensure that the remote supports can happen. So getting right down to the nitty-gritty of having a discussion about remote supports, we have a tool that case managers can use to guide a planning and support team. And it makes sure that you cover all of those considerations that our two provider pilot agencies were talking about. This includes identifying who the virtual support partner is going to be specifically, and if there is going to be a remote support technology supplier, who is that going to be? Also, the checklist helps to identify what specific technology will be utilized in remote supports, and then who's going to facilitate the training around that. Everybody on the team needs to understand how to use the remote support technology. What times will the remote support technology be focused on? And who will show up at the door if in-person supports are needed? All of that needs to be thought about, discussed, planned for in advance. And are there any other circumstances? What are the emergency backups? All of that is documented on the remote support checklist. And not only does it make sure that the whole team is aware of what the plan is in regards to remote supports, but it's a documentation piece as well. It's not fixed as well, by the way. I'll mention that you may determine that changes need to be made to this checklist or this plan after the fact. So we talked about the process that case managers would use and that planning and support teams use as they come together around this. Once that plan is developed, the installation occurs. The education is an important component to ensure the virtual support partner, the individual, most importantly, understands how to use the technology, and anybody else that's involved with supporting that individual understands. And then, of course, documenting it all. It's documented on the checklist, but it's also referenced like any wayward service in the individual's person-centered plan. So just to recap, what you can expect in the future if this is something that would be beneficial to supporting a person. First is that education process and making sure that you understand what remote support is really about. Using the tools that are out there, the "Is this right for me?" tool to determine, are we going to move in this direction or is it maybe not the best fit? Using the checklist to guide the discussion and make sure that you have all the necessary elements for remote support, installing the technology, and then ensuring that everybody, most importantly, the person understands how to use that technology. And that might not be a one-time event. That might be ongoing support. And then after the plan is in place, the technology is in place, and people are actually using it, evaluating and ensuring that it continues to work the way you want it to and make adjustments if needed. Lastly, I'll just mention, this has also been, Elisa shared it before, but on our website, it's just 2 clicks to get to all of the information. And this information is not stagnant. It'll continue to be updated as time goes on, especially, starting in 2023, we would really love to see this expand. But you go to our main page and you go to assistive technology and remote supports. 3rd item down is what is remote support. And then once you get here, if you scroll down, there's a nice little 1-minute high-level video. And then there are also some links to our guidance documents, including our remote supports right for me document. Last thing I'll point out, you can see here at the bottom of the slide, there is an email address. It's also on the 2nd click that you can reach out to the remote support team here at DDS with any questions that you have. And this is anybody, case managers, providers, families, anybody that has any questions about remote support. As we continue to develop this service, don't hesitate to reach out, ask your questions. We really want to see this expand because we believe that there's a great opportunity to help increase independence for people utilizing this service. And we're really looking forward to seeing it grow and grow along with it in 2023. Elisa?
Thank you so much, Wayne. That's why we do keep questions to the end, because as we go through the course of the presentations, so many questions are answered. And Wayne, you did a great job of really outlining the process. So I want to cycle back to some of the questions that are in the chat. And some I will field and some hopefully I'll get some help with. The first is, how does this address the hundreds of individuals who are on the waiting list for services and have been waiting for years? This alone does not address all of the people on the waiting list, but the purpose of these forums is to identify the range of options that are available to individuals. And as we have entered this period of transformation, and you'll have many, many opportunities to participate in forums with myself and the commissioner in the months ahead. As we look at transformation, our hope is that this range of options meets the needs of some individuals that may, at this point in time, have supports that can be utilized by people who are on the waiting list. And so as there's expansion of support options, our hope is that that means that there are services available to more people, the right services with the right amount of support to the optimal number of people. And so that's the overall strategy. And we will be releasing the schedule of the forums for 2023 for the first half of 2023. The January forum will be on self-direction, which is another service option that's available to people. But as we're holding these monthly forums, the objective is to show the range of options that are out there available to people, and hopefully as options increase, it allows for more people to receive services at their optimal level. And then there was a question, I had reached out to our human rights liaisons and asked them to invite committee members. And so I was thrilled to see this question. The remote supports guide states that only when the technology employed is determined to infringe upon the rights of the individual or others is an HRC review required. What criteria determines infringements of the rights for HRC review? So if a person lives in their own setting and they, along with their team, determined that remote supports is an option for that they want to explore, that's a team process that does not require HRC review. So we talked about utilizing this technology perhaps in a CLA environment or a CRS environment. That's not remote supports the waivered service. But if technology is used in those settings and maybe one person benefits, but other people are not utilizing the technology, in those cases, even if everyone's consenting, the HRC review may be necessary. But as far as remote supports as a waivered service, Human Rights Committee review is not required. Really, this technology, and I want to emphasize this, I know Kat emphasized this, is technology used to optimize independence. It's not designed to be restrictive or in any way intrusive. It's really designed to optimize independence. And in some ways, the technology is able to, at times, I think there was an example of somebody that was at times refusing staff supports where technology worked really well. For some people, this technology is much less intrusive than having actual people in their living environment. And so really the objective is to maximize independence. And then there is a question about what if the agency is absorbing the costs and not submitted to DDS for billing? So if an agency is interested in providing remote supports, like any other service that is where qualified providers provide a service, they would have to submit to be qualified to provide remote supports. Deborah Lynch at DDS is the point person. Agencies are pretty familiar with working with her. I think she's off until after the first of the year, but reaching out to her, an agency can obtain information about being a qualified provider for remote supports. Let me see if there are other questions that we have not yet touched upon. I don't see any. Are there additional questions or comments?
Hi, Lisa. Is it okay if I announce an NOO?
You can announce that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. There'll be 2 NOOs, notice of opportunities coming out the first week of January. And those of you who put in for the ones that were this summer, they are the same NOOs. And one of them specifically mentions remote supports. So keep your eyes open for that. One is for qualified providers, and one is for families and individuals. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Patricia. So that concludes our forum for today. I want to remind you that we hold these forums the 4th Tuesday of every month, except December, when it was the 3rd Tuesday. So thanks for your flexibility. In January, on January 24th, from 3 to 4:30, our forum will be focused on self-direction, and we'll share stories, we'll share techniques, we'll share perspectives from the family member, the individual, and a little bit about the self-direction option. I wish everyone a happy and healthy new year, and we'll see you in 2023. Take care.
Thank you, Lisa. You too.